Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Spirit Goddess Spreading Awareness. This week we are talking about enabling. So I'm going to start off with, what does enabling mean? Enabler refers to someone's personality behaviors in enabling ways, justifying indirectly, supporting someone else's potentially harmful behaviors. In other words, enabling is directly or indirectly supporting someone else's unhealthy behavior. While it's natural to want to shield a loved one from harm, enabling often ends up hurting them in the long run by delaying them from having to comfort their addiction or issues. You may be enabling a loved one if you find yourself frequently picking up their slack. Example, doing household chores, looking after their children, or taking care of essential daily activities. There's a difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Family members' motivation to enable a loved one's addiction can be broken down into 4 main categories: fear, guilt, hope, and victim. Each comes with different manipulation tactics on the part of the addict. People who engage in enabling behaviors aren't the bad guy, but their actions have the potential to promote and support unhealthy behaviors and patterns in others. Why is enabling someone bad? Maybe you excuse troubling behavior, lend money, or assist in other ways, but it's important to realize that enabling does not really help. Over time, it can have a damaging effect on your loved one and others around them. It's difficult for someone to help if they don't fully see the consequences of their actions. What causes someone to be an enabler? Enabling is often associated with growing up in a home with an addicted or alcoholic parent, but it can also be associated with growing up in a family where there was one or more traumas involved: a death of a parent, sibling, or a loved one, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, or an absent parent, or divorce. There are 2 phases of enabling: innocent and desperate. There's also different kinds of enablers. There's a passive enabler. Passive enablers are typically unaware of what's happening. They often mean well, but they're blinded by the achievement mode and are focused on the driving results. They get to a point where they simply don't look further than they should and naively trust that their leaders are operating from their same value system and leadership styles. Active enablers. They do see what's happening, but fail to take action. They're crucial to combating toxic behaviors because they are typically in the trenches of the problem and can best describe and document the situation. But they can be hesitant to speak up while they what they're experiencing because they think that they lack the stakes, to bring a complaint forward for fear that there will be repercussions. Geez, I'm just messing up a bunch tonight, y'all. I'm sorry. It's been a minute. The only thing that all enablers have in common is this: they love someone who is out of control, and they find themselves taking more responsibility for the actions of that person than the person is taking themselves. How do you deal with an enabler? It is vital to be firm and confront an enabler about what an enabler is and offer concrete examples of how their enabling behavior has harmed the addict in their past. Education and clear communication that avoids the blaming language can help turn an enabler into a supporter. Be supportive, don't enable. Participate in therapy or family therapy. Learn about addiction. Set healthy boundaries. Keep open communication. Don't use substances around them. Enjoy happy and healthy activities together. Difference between an encourager and an enabler. The difference between The encouraging and enabling families is their reaction to the situation. The encourager helps the child believe he or she can go beyond their disabilities with limitless potential. The enabler says, "Poor baby, you can't do that because you have disabilities." Enabling behavior is a link to codependency. Codependency is an extreme or excessive emotional or psychological reliance on someone, typically someone who needs support because of an illness or addiction. An enabling parent relies emotionally on a child who needs their help. Enablers often have low self-esteem. They feel better about themselves and their relationships when they can have control over the situation. Enablers are often codependent with the addict. People who are enabling addicts because of low self-esteem are afraid to hurt the feelings of their loved ones by saying no. Enablers are victims of narcissistic abuse who end up either facilitating abuse or becoming abusers themselves. Why do families of a narcissist enable them? Because a king wouldn't have any power without their servants. A narcissist would not have as much reign without their enablers. In a narcissistic family, the narcissistic enabler is the person who reinforces the power of the narcissist. If assisting someone else is overexerting your time, your energy, or your resources, then stop. Even if you agreed to do something, if the cost becomes too great, whether that's financial, emotional, or you feel like you can't back out, adjust how you can help the situation. If you are harming yourself, that is not helping. That does not help you in any way, shape, or form. I always give resources at the end. That was a lot of information to spit out like that at once, but there's national support lines, you guys, open toll-free 24/7, 365. You can call or text 988. That is the National Suicide and Mental Health Crisis Hotline. You can also visit 988 Lifeline, LIFELINE.org. And if anybody wants to come up and talk about it, me and Here for This are going to conversate back and forth a little bit about enabling. But if anyone wants to come up and share, maybe a time that you didn't realize you were enabling, or a time that you were enabled, or the situation, like I said, that we have all been witnessing for months. There are so many examples of enabling in that situation. I myself have enabled when I was married to my ex-husband. So I would find myself sometimes enabling him just because it was easier to deal with the situation because he was an addict. Not that I fed him any drugs or anything like that. But it just came with, I picked up the slack when it came to groceries and gas in the car and things like that. Because I was always picking up the slack, he thought it was okay to do that. And that's not okay.
That often happens when you have a person involved in a relationship and one of them is, going through active addiction. I know even in my household when I was growing up, that went on a lot. My dad definitely picked up the slack all the time. And then as we got older, then we did.
Right.
Mom didn't get stuff done, so then we stepped up and did it, and everybody termed it as being responsible or what have you, but really, what was going on in that household was a lot of enabling.
Same. My mom did a lot. She worked her butt off. I can name, multiple really good jobs that my mom held when I was a child, and I can only name less than a handful that my father actually had. He is an addict. He is an alcoholic. And so she picked up the slack a lot of times too. And then she, continued to go on and enable in other ways. So yes, my mom has at times been an enabler. Like I said, I admit to it. When I was married to my husband, I did the same thing. I ended up in the same situation. So like it talked about in the beginning, a lot of times enablers come from pretty much broken homes, families that have addiction problems, or there has been, big traumas, losing a family member, a sibling, a child. There you go. There's another. For example, a lot of people have enabled Monica for the last 2 years, because she used the death of her child. A lot of people looked at her and went, this poor woman. And I don't look at her any differently when it comes to losing a child. Like, I do feel bad for her. But you can't get on a platform and use that. You can't use it against people. You can't do the things that you have done, to
Well, a lot of that enabling was excusing very poor behavior because of being in mourning, and that is not.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Acceptable.
A lot of that happens on TikTok. There is a lot of people that enable addicts on this app. They're addicts in active addiction, and they get on here and cry and, I need somewhere to go. I don't have anywhere. I need a bus ticket. I need a train. I need this. I need that, food, whatever it may be, whatever. But it happens every single day. There are people being enabled.
And you can enable someone so much to help them cause their own unaliving, so to speak. I hate to even say that. I wish I could just use the regular words that we would be using for that.
No, it's okay.
But on here we have to use that, so we all know what that means. But yeah, a person in active addiction on here begging for, $25, that is essentially going to buy them their next, drug of choice on here.
Yeah.
And that could be the wrong one, the wrong day, the wrong time. You got to think about that when you see that. And I could go on and list a whole list of them, of people that do that every day. I'm not going to do that during this podcast, but, we talk about these people all the time in our other lives.
Absolutely.
So you need to always be on the lookout for what's going on when people are asking for things. And quite honestly, even if somebody is just, not working or whatever, you're enabling them by buying them groceries. Honestly, you're an adult. Go out, get a job, take the steps that you need to get where you need to be. And I'm not saying I've never helped anyone. There's a difference between helping and enabling.
Correct.
When you see them on here day after day, now I freely admit I've been in a grocery store before and seen, a mom that didn't have enough money to pay for something, and I've paid for their stuff. Am I enabling them? I don't really know if I did at that point. Did they spend their money on something else? I don't know. But it's not like I do that on the daily for that same person. Right. When you see the same people asking for money every day on here, you can best bet that you are enabling them if you give them money. Right.
That's different. Even when it comes down to, say you have a child that is an addict, and they have children, and you find yourself time after time after time buying them diapers or things for the children, and that can be a form of enabling. They could be dependent on you because they know that you will supply those diapers. You will not say no to those children, and in turn they're using whatever money that should have been used on that for their drug of choice or, their next fix, whatever you want to call it. But sometimes, we don't even realize. It took me a long time to realize that I was even enabling my husband. It took me until we were separated. The state that I was in at the time makes you be separated for a year before you can have your divorce. So I was separated for a few months before I realized, damn, there was a lot of times that I enabled him and that I pretty much allowed him to put us in situations that he did, because I always made sure we had what we needed. And he knew that. He knew that I wasn't going to let us go without, because I do have my daughter.
Someone made a comment that there was a fine line between enabling and helping your children. You're absolutely right.
There is.
And that even goes into when they're tiny, when they're toddlers. There's certain tasks and things that you can ask them to be doing, simply putting away some blocks they got out or something like that. That's completely feasible for them to be able to put those things back into a bucket or a basket, wherever you keep them. you doing it, you are enabling them in a sense, because you're not making them be responsible for their own messes.
Right.
And if you keep doing that throughout time, you will find yourself picking up and cleaning up bigger and bigger messes that, aren't necessarily physical messes like on a floor, like messes of being in trouble with the law, or
Right.
not having the money to pay for things they should be able to pay for. I mean, just a myriad of different messes that you'll be cleaning up. And it all starts then. I mean, people like to think that it doesn't, but it really does.
Someone said that some say that they're hungry and they'll refuse DoorDash. Yeah, that's another way that they're enabling. If they're refusing DoorDash, if they say they're that hungry, why are you refusing it? You apparently are not that hungry, or you would be taking that food.
When you see that they're only wanting cash, like Cash App or Venmo or, PayPal, however they're asking for just cash, essentially, and they won't take a Walmart order or a DoorDash, then you can best bet that they are not using that money to get food of any kind.
Right.
Because if you're offering DoorDash, you could order them whatever they wanted.
Absolutely correct. There's, and I said in here too, there's a very fine line between supporting somebody and enabling them also when it comes to your children, because you're always going to want to help them no matter what. And they know that. So it's a very fine line. Go ahead. I think one of the worst things is, God, we're both doing it. One of the worst things is when your kids have kids, you really find yourself easily enabling because, they're your grandchildren and you're like, I don't want to see them suffer. I don't want to see them go without. And it's one thing if your child is actually going through a financial hardship. Now, if you know that they are drinking or buying some sort of illicit substance with that money instead of buying diapers or food for their children, then, you know that. Now, if they're really just down on their luck and they just, had some big bill hit and you're going to help them out, that's a totally different story. Right.
I mean, it is a fine line, but in your heart of hearts which one is right and which one is wrong. I mean, we all do. And, as parents, we will often just overlook it because we don't want to see anybody suffer or go without. And I'm not going to say I would never, take care of my grandchildren if my kid wasn't doing something right. I'll tell you what I would do. I would work on getting my grandchild away from them so they could get the help that they need to get themselves straightened out, so they could be the parent that they need to be, instead of just constantly throwing money at a problem is never a solution.
I agree. I seen somebody else in the comments said that their mom was a huge enabler, and then that led to them marrying a narcissist. And I brought that up in here. It leads not only to narcissist, but codependency. And that's another, podcast that we had is codependency. So it all links together, really.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like a 6-day long podcast about how all these things connect to each other, because then you have trauma bonds that then follow in with being with a narcissist. I mean, It all links together. And she said earlier, if you guys want to hop up right now, we will, come in the box and we'll talk about it.
If anybody, she said she can't hop in right now, but if anybody, I'll give you a chance right now to hop up in the box and talk about it. And just know that it is recorded. It will be on my podcast on YouTube. Otherwise, I'm going to end the recording part and then we can continue chatting. But I don't want to keep the recording going if nobody has anything.
We do have a guest coming up.
Awesome. Welcome. Hi.
So I work in DV/SA coalition that also has a shelter. Awesome. And in doing that for a long time, I see different situations. I see the codependency. And I myself, a lot of the time, feel like I walk that fine line because, in a way, I never want to see a child go without stuff. But there's a point where I have to say, you know what, your parents need to do this for you.
Right.
And I see a lot of situations where especially with dealing with the courts, oh, well, this is going on and the addiction to this is going on. And in the meantime, Bobby and Susie need school clothes, school supplies, food, lunch money, and no one's really thinking about that. And, having a child, it's not like, oh, wow, yeah, that was like a great 20 minutes and now I'm done.
Right.
Okay. They're not just till they're 18. They're till you're gone.
Till you're gone.
That's your baby, and you want to do whatever you can. But in the same way, every mother knows, if I keep doing this, I'm going to keep doing this. Yes. And it's going to go on and on and on. Okay. And at what point do you say no? And that's what I deal with a lot in my job too, because at what point in this situation do I say, you know what, mom and dad are both working, this is what's going on, I don't know where the support is going, but I could only help with this little bit.
Right.
Because for the past, say, 5 years, we've done this, and this, and it's not stopping.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I mean, I can speak from experience on that. I'll tell you how I handle those situations is I will help my child, and then I set them up with the resources to help themselves after that. And if you choose not to do that, then I'm going to tell you flat out that I've done this before, and we've talked about how to avoid this. Are we getting feedback, or is that just noise?
You probably think I have a blind spot because this is...
No, we got feedback. That's better.
Oh, okay. Are we still getting it?
Nope, that's good.
Okay. And that's how I deal with that. I will help, I will educate, and I will give resources, and I will also make a plan for them to not fall into like whatever it is that they just fell into. And I mean, I think that is the most appropriate way to go about it when you're dealing with your children, because we're always going to help them out. We're always going to dig them out, but we can't keep doing it over and over again, because then we are just creating an enabling environment where they know, if I don't get it done, somebody's going to pick up my slack. Someone's going to take care of it. They're going to dig me out again. And, I mean, I've had to do, tough love before, where I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that again. We've been through this before. We've discussed it. We've talked about it. I've given you the resources. I've given you the plan of how to avoid it. And if you're still doing it, then you made a conscious choice to have that happen again. And, I firmly believe that every experience is a learning experience. Every problem, every difficulty, it's all learning. But if you didn't learn from it, if you're repeating it, you definitely didn't learn from it.
Right.
That's for sure. And that's just, and I tell them all the time, like, that's part of being an adult, is learning from your mistakes, not making them again, moving on, pick yourself up, move on, and don't do it again. And now you know how you got into it, and you know how to keep yourself from falling back into it again. And that's how I deal with, and it's hard, because sometimes you gotta be, I guess the way I term it in my household is a little bit ugly about something, because you're not, giving somebody their way. They think you're mean or nasty to them, but it's not that at all. It's that we've been down this road. We've talked about it. I've already dug you out once, and it's not always money even. It's all different circumstances and things, Right. But that's always how I've dealt with it. And I think that if I'm going to give advice to anybody about how to deal with it, I think it's that.
Yeah, tough love for sure. And sometimes it's hard, but you got to try harder to do that, because I absolutely agree with everything she said. I mean, you've got to learn from certain situations, and that's how we've all gotten to where we are as adults, is learning from, our mistakes and moving forward and making a change from them. Somebody in the comments said an apology without change is manipulation. I really like that. Thank you for that little quote.
It's not an apology either. It's just an acknowledgement of something, especially if they do it again. It's not an apology. It's their behavior. That's just how they are going to do.
Correct.
And like anything else in the world, it's a vicious cycle. If the children see that this is what's happening and this is what's working and I don't have to do this, that, or the other because my mom or dad didn't, they just did this, this, and this, where does the cycle stop?
Right.
You know, at what point? So, I will
Thank you
let
for coming
myself
up.
down so someone else can come up.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.
Have a good night, honey.
She's been a wonderful addition to our group. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. Is there anybody else that wants to come up? If not, that is good. We can end the recording part and we can continue on. I think Ambi is going to do a live after, I think.